Hi, this is Professor Michael Smith. When we left off, we had just created our data structure for an icon using an object with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 key value pairs. We have class, which takes an array, color, which takes a string. We're using black, which is a variable value saved up here. Content, which will end up being a string value if there is content in, say, a text icon. A size, which is a number, the position, which is going to represent the top and left values in an array of two numbers. Transform, which will allow us to add additional functions beyond the translate function that we use all the time. And then filter, if we want to replace the default drop shadow function. For example, with the text icons, we use none. So we replace the filter, so there is no filter there. So how are we going to do that? So the idea is we have these object values, and now we need to take these values to be able to create I elements. All right, we have these I elements that we're going to need to build and add the class, and then add all these style values to them, including color, position, and font size. So how are we going to do that? Well, to do that, we're going to use a method called the create element. So using the document.createElement method, it allows us to make an HTML element specified by its tag name. So for example, this piece of documentation shows how you could create a div element, right, by calling document.createElement div, all right, as a string value. Well, we're going to be making I elements for our icon, so it's an I element. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do this inside of a function. We're going to make a function called buildIcon, and build is, it's called build, but it passes an icon object, so one of our objects that we've made here, as an argument. And we're going to create a variable value I, and we're going to set that equal to an I element. So we're going to call document.createElement I. And so I is going to be an actual I element. And then we can attach a whole bunch of manipulators to the I element that we've just created. And we'll start with the class list. So we would call I.classList.add. And here we could add a number of classes. Normally you could add 1, 2, 3 as a bunch of comma separated values of class names. So we could have class, comma, class 2, comma, class 3. Now, because we're going to be working with icons where we have just 1 or 2 and sometimes 3, because we're going to be using a hidden class, so we could have an icon like FAR and FA or we have in our text icons just text icon, but sometimes we're also going to have, say, the hidden class as well, because we're going to want that by default to be hidden. All right, so there could be any number of classes, and the way to deal with this is we're going to use spread syntax. So we're going to pass the array as a value using spread syntax. So what this allows us to do, so we'll call the array of strings by spread syntax to 3 dots dot icon dot class. So we're going into our icon effectively object that we've passed. We're passing an object, and we use dot syntax to get to the class. All right. So how does this spread syntax work? Just if you haven't seen it before. So it allows an iterable, such as an array expression or string, to be expanded in places where 0 or more arguments exist for function calls. So this is what we need exactly, because we're going to have 1 or more arguments passed as values to the array, as an array of values. So you can see here's this numbers array that's passed to a sum function by calling it with the dot syntax here, the spread syntax here. All right. So this will allow, when we pass to the add method here, any number of values within our class values within our array. Next, we can call the I element and call the style method and the color of the font, and then get to set that equal to icon.color. So we call the icon object and say, hey, go to the color key and give us a value. Next, if there is text content to be added, we'll set that equal to icon.content. Then we can set the size of the I element with style.fontSize. And because we need to add the rem value, we're going to have to concatenate a string together using, we'll use the template literal syntax to do that. So we'll take the icon.size and then add the rem value into our concatenated string here. Then we'll be able to set our position of the left and top. So we'll say i.style.left equals, again, we'll have to use a concatenated string so we can add our percent symbol. All right, so there's going to be a percent symbol at the end of this string. So we'll have to say icon.position. And this is an array of two numbers. And the first number we'll get to with the bracket syntax for the first value. And then we can get to the second value, i.style.top. I'm going to set that equal to our icon.position bracket value 1. All right, and we got to make sure we add our percent sign again. Okay, and so you can see those two values. We're going to position bracket value 0 or position bracket value 1 within our array of position values. Then with the transform property, by default it is set to that function translate and minus 50%, minus 50%. But we're going to be wanting to add other functions like scale or rotate. And if we have this just set to icon.transform, that would give whatever value we give, which is scale. And it would erase the translate function. So we want to always make sure that the translate function is included in the beginning. So we would put the translate minus 50%, minus 50%. And then we could allow for additional function values to be added, all right, like scale or rotate in this string. So you could put a string of different function values such as scale, and then it would be added to the transform, and it would keep as well the original translate minus 50%, minus 50%. And finally, we have the style, icon.style.filter equals icon.filter. And this one, we're going to, the default is the drop shadow, but we're just going to be replacing that drop shadow. In many cases, whenever we use a text icon, we'll use the none value for that particular property. So once we have made our I element, attached a whole bunch of methods to that I element to manipulate that I element, we'll finally just return that I element. And now we can call this function and pass an object, any of these objects, and it should return the I element with everything attached. So let's test this out. So looking at the scene 2, let's call this open. Actually, it already is open. And we'll look at the JavaScript console, and we can call our function build, right? And you can see it's there. So there's the declaration of the function. But we could call the kind of icon value, the original one, right? This icon value that we've saved. And we hit return, and we can see here it is. We've built our element. It has the FAR map, FAR, and then FA-map, the color, which is then calculated, that hex color is recalculated to an RGB value. We have our font size left and top with our proper percentage symbols and our rem value as well. We can also call the values from the scene arrays. So remember, we have these scenes, scene 2 icons and scene 3 icons. Each has 4 objects, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we could call each object in the array, right? So we could call scene 2 icons bracket 0. So we could get to the first value, and there it is. And then we could call the second one. And that array of objects, of icon objects, and there we go. And you can see I've built a map, a cat, with the corresponding color values and positions that change. And then there's the globe. And then finally, the last value in the array, the sun. And then we could do the same for scene 3, right? And we could see that this is our division symbol, and it's just our text icon with our filter now none. Okay, so it gets rid of the drop shadow in its proper position. And then we could call the other 3 with bracket syntax for the array of objects. And you can see that here's our 4 icons that would be built: text icon, division symbol, text icon, minus symbol, text icon, multiplication symbol, text icon, plus symbol, all have that filter none. So now we have this nice tool to build the element based on our icon data structure. And in our next video, we'll learn how to map those values to the web page using the append child method.